Tears in my hands, under the shade of wisdom, lonely by the window, Diphiri Diphirimisi, emotionally disarmed. Well, these are just some of the books written by author Stan Montsho. He's now back with another offering titled The Rage Ashes, The President is Dead. In this book, he shines the spotlight on how a young girl named Retaba Talo lived and died an outcast, but received a presidential burial. Well, for more on this story, let's speak to its writer, Stan, who's joining us via Zoom. Stan, a very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning to you and good morning to the listeners.
Let's start with the title of the book. Why did you decide to title it The Rage Ashes?
Well, it was The Rage Ashes because this came out of the anger that resulted into two people burning and becoming the ashes that were blended together. So this was the ashes of Retaba Talo and that of the president.
So you start the book with a state funeral procession. Do tell us more about this and how you used it, to set a precedence of what's to come in the following chapters.
Well, I think if you can look at how it started with the funeral, as you said, but I think also this is also just saying that the president was given accolades in this funeral, but this young girl who died trying to make a point about the abuse that befell her and that of other women did not even have a single mention in that funeral. So I think certain things are by those that we see as idols, and then we miss out to those that are trying to make a point. And I think it has happened in many times that those that are leading the movement to try to get a voice for themselves and the other people that are abused, after some time, I think it just mellowed down and then we forget about it.
Now, this book centers around the character of Retaba Talo, who is taken across the border under false pretenses. Unpack for us this young girl's journey as you describe it in the book.
Well, she was trafficked, she was kidnapped, and she had to go through different borders. And that is actually was motivated by a syndicate that young people into the fields and the soldiers were operating. And by the way, the kidnappers of this young girl was her own priest and her own deacons. So I think what you can see in that journey as well is that the kidnapping was instigated by a priest who was a man, but then the aides were women. So I think also I'm trying to get a balance here of men that are kidnapping, that are abusing, but then women also that are also helping out in the process. And I think she had to go all the way into the unknown and also having to learn the languages of the new countries that she went to, which I think, if you can imagine, it is very abusive, not only physically, but emotionally and physically as well.
And another interesting character in this book is that of Stenko Tababa, a priest that uses his influence to sort of lure young girls and sell them for precious stones. Wow, do tell us more about that.
And that is very painful because there's a person that we entrust everything with our children from Sunday school, everything. And we actually surrender everything to him. He is now the person who's the pinpoint, who is kidnapping and who is trafficking the children. And it became easy for him to be able to do that, unbeknown to everybody, until later on in the story when everything had to change.
I mean, that makes it particularly even more interesting that a religious leader could do such a thing. And one wonders then how that ended.
Yeah, well, when something like that, started, it will always end in not so good manner because everything in hate, in sin, and if you're doing it within the house or the holy house of the Lord like that, I don't think it will grow to manifest into any form of success. And I think that is what we are seeing later on in the story when she comes back enraged that when she started to unleash this rage, she started with Stanko Tababa.
And one of the interesting things I found about the book was its settings. I mean, its setting rather. It's based in the Republic of Maradia. Do paint a picture of what this country is like.
Well, but the country is a successful country in terms of its economy. And then also, if you look at the living standard measures of the different people, you realize that there are those that are able to get and own the means of production, but then there are also those that are able that are suffering. But then also, I think the scene is set around the people that are able to get justice and those that are not able to get justice. And I think this is where we're trying to make a point, to say those that are making laws should find a balance, especially for those that do not have a voice and do not have justice. And this is where I think the conflicting start. But then I think also this is a fictitious name that I gave this particular country. But then somebody may immediately relate to that and say, you know, this is a fictitious name, but then I know for sure that this is my country. And I think that was a deliberate stance that we took to say we're going to give it a fictitious name, but then each and every country in the world.
And speaking of finding a voice, I mean, the book touches on gender inequality and how that plays a role in the oppression of women in our communities. Take us through how you highlight that in the book. How does it find expression in this book?
It is highlighted in two ways. Like I said, when I started, it is highlighted in a way that men are abusive to women, and they're taking advantage of them as their sources of labor. Like this young girl was recruited into young labor in the bushes somewhere where the soldiers were operating, and it is twofold. And I think you would have seen in the book that there is female mutilation. And this mutilation of genitalia of this young girl when she reached Fefubru, which is the village where she escaped, that particular action was undertaken by women. So there's men that are abusing women, and there's also women that are abusing women or young girls in the name of we are practicing our cultural practices. So I think it was also trying to look at toxic cultural practices that are undertaken by women and women in the name of we are trying to preserve our culture. So I think those are the two balances that I was trying to unfold in the book.
All right, Stan, great chatting to you, man. Beautiful read this is. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Well, speaking to us about his newly released book titled The Rage Ashes, The President is Dead, it was author Stan Montsho and he joined us via Zoom. All right, it is 5 minutes